What's going on, guys? Today, I've got Polina Pompliano. This is the last episode of 2024, and we discuss a ton. We get into what's going on with Bitcoin. What are the big threats? Are they real or are they not? How I think about 2024, what transpired, and what's going to happen in 2025 when it comes to Bitcoin. We then talk about the market closing for Jimmy Carter's death and why I disagree, think it's market manipulation, and why they should open the market 24/7. We then get into a number of controversial topics, things like immigration, and also understanding why nuance is so powerful in a world that only wants things to be black and white. This conversation touches on tons of topics, and I promise if you watch the whole thing, you're going to learn a lot, you're going to understand my opinion, and you probably are going to walk away from this having your own thoughts, and so I'd love to hear them. Please get on Twitter and let me know what you think. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know, and then we can have a conversation. That's the beauty of this type of episode, is that I get to learn from all of you. So please, please, please reach out once you've actually listened to the whole thing, and I'd love to learn from you just as much as you hopefully learn from me. So here's my latest conversation with Polina Pompliano. All right, Polina, what's the first topic?
All right, we got Bitcoin at $95,000 at the current time of recording. So what is the status of Bitcoin going into 2025? Where are we at?
Bitcoin in 2024 went from a contrarian idea to a consensus idea, which is very important because that meant that Larry Fink and the rest of Wall Street, they said, you know what, these Bitcoiners, they may be insane, they may have been early, but they are right, and we're going to get in the game. And now the reason why that's so important is that once Larry Fink and the rest of Wall Street says, we want this, they don't stop. And so we have seen $50 billion flow into the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. We have seen tens of billions of dollars flow into the other ETFs. And all of a sudden, all of the career risk around Bitcoin on Wall Street got removed, and that has opened the floodgates. And so if you see the corporations, why are they raising so much money to go buy Bitcoin? It's because all the fixed income or all the debt funds, they now are allowed to go and buy these bonds that are backed by Bitcoin. The ETFs, why are they raising so much money? Because all that career risk has been removed. So the story of 2024 is that we successfully went from it being an individual-driven market to now it is fully an organization, an institution-driven market. And I think that that transition really, really changed a lot of the market structure. When the market structure changes, you can see price has changed. We had never gone into a halving at a new all-time high price. And so when you see that, you say to yourself, wait a second, there's a lot of things that changed in 2024 that will forever have moved Bitcoin to grow up. And so Bitcoin was basically, it was like an adolescent type, technology. It's a full-grown adult now. And what I think we will see in 2025 is we're going to see the countries start to participate as well. And we're going to have gone from individuals to institutions to countries, all within the span of, call it 24 to 36 months.
And you went on Fox talking about how Trump should buy Bitcoin in the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Yeah. Yeah. Well, why?
Well, if we're going to go and we're going to buy Greenland, which is a national strategic purchase, if we're going to go and take back the Panama Canal, which 36,000 Americans died building, and Panama all of a sudden is playing games and they are trying to use this as a bargaining chip. Well, wouldn't it make sense for us to spend a little bit of money to also get digital real estate, to go and get these digital assets? There's only 21 million that will ever exist. And we know, we can count, I can get up to 5, 6, 7, 8% of all Bitcoin that will ever be in circulation that's in the hands of individuals and companies. Then you add in the ETFs, then you add in the masses of people. There's not a lot of Bitcoin that trades. And so if the United States wants to be a leader, then they are going to have to go and they're going to have to buy Bitcoin. And if we don't, it isn't a game of, oh, El Salvador, that's a small little country, nobody cares. Or, oh, Bhutan, I can't point it out on a map. Don't worry about them. Russia has now come out and said, both Putin and other people in the government, we are mining Bitcoin and we are going to use Bitcoin for transactions because it cannot be censored. And so if you go back, check the receipts. I said that when the United States sanctioned Russia in the way that it did and went after all the oligarchs in the way that it did, and then when it took Russian assets and it said, we are going to lick our fingers, stick it in the air, and we're going to decide that these assets are now going to be the Ukrainian people's assets. You have weaponized the U.S. financial system, and you are going to push people off of that system who are your adversaries and or think that they may become one of your adversaries in the future. And so now we are seeing it. Of course, a country like Russia, which is under these immense sanctions, which I'm not making judgment on whether we should have put them, we shouldn't have put them from a kind of strategic standpoint, a geopolitical negotiating standpoint. I'm putting all that aside. I'm merely looking at it from what are the incentives now that it's been done. You are going to push them off of it. And they are saying that they are mining Bitcoin. They're going to use it for transactions. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, that's a great reason why Bitcoin shouldn't be valuable. It doesn't matter. Every single technology that I can think of was first adopted by people on the fringes of society. They were the nerds. They were the weirdos. They were the criminals. They were the people who had some specific use case, some edge case that they needed to use the technology. Beepers, if you go back and remember, there was only two types of people pretty much using beepers early on: drug dealers and business executives. If you go back and you remember, why did people have phones in their cars? A lot of young people forget that there was literally phones that had a wire in a car. Well, who was using that? Business executives and drug dealers. And so you can go through all these technologies and you start to realize that technology is usually adopted at the fringes and then gets pulled into the mass adoption, right? The stay-at-home soccer mom is not using a beeper first. They're not using a laptop first. They're not using the internet first. They only get it once there is true mass adoption. And so Bitcoin being adopted by a country that is under these adverse pressures from the United States makes a lot of sense. Why did El Salvador do it? All of a sudden, El Salvador is showing up to the IMF and they're doing a bunch of negotiating, and Bitcoin gave them immense negotiating leverage with the IMF that they previously didn't have.
Yeah.
So you see this and you say to yourself, okay, obviously other countries are doing it too. We also all kind of wash over the fact that there are countries in the Middle East that have joint ventures, publicly announced joint ventures with US-based publicly traded mining companies. And so you say to yourself, okay, hold on a second here. Countries are mining Bitcoin. Some countries are even now saying that they're using it for transactions to avoid censorship. Just extrapolate out what's going to happen. Of course, these countries are going to end up adopting this asset. I'm not saying it's going to replace fiat currencies. What I am saying, though, is that it is going to have a place in their portfolio of strategic reserve assets. If you can see the writing on the wall and you're the United States, you already have 200,000 Bitcoin in your control, don't sell them. Commit to never selling them. Then go and buy more. And the beauty of this is we're not talking about a lot of money. If we went and we took $100 billion and we bought Bitcoin, that would be, I can't remember if it's 10 or 20% of all the money we've sent to Ukraine. It's nothing. It's a rounding error, right? And so if we have a $2 trillion annual deficit and we spend $100 billion, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Literally, your life will not change. Nothing will change. And so if you said to me, hey, what should we do? I've previously said, look, just print it, right? They're going to print it anyways. But actually, if we had intelligent people who were going to do this, you wouldn't print it. The better thing to do would be, let's find $100 billion of savings. Let's take that money and divert it to go and buy the Bitcoin. I just don't think that we have enough time for people to go and get $100 billion of savings, because when we started talking about this, Bitcoin was at $70,000. Right? It was, I think, $69,000 on November 1st, 2024. 60 days later, Bitcoin is near $100,000.
Yep.
So every day you wait is max pain from a financial standpoint. It's more expensive for you to go and buy the Bitcoin. So you can keep waiting. That's fine. But everyone gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. Let's hope that our country isn't buying it at $1 million a coin because they were so kind of dumb and slow to act on this.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you about two potential threats that have been circulating in the news lately. The first being that BlackRock has come out with this explainer video about Bitcoin saying that there's no guarantee that Bitcoin's 21 million supply cap won't be changed in the future.
Stop it.
What do they know?
BlackRock doesn't. Listen, this is Lloyd.
Okay, but again, Michael Saylor retweeted it. And
No. Hold on. Let's back up.
Okay.
This is classic, like people who don't understand how companies work on the internet yelling and screaming because they want to hate BlackRock. There's plenty of things that BlackRock does that you can critique. There's a lot of things that BlackRock does that you should sit there and say, hey, I like this. That's true of all these financial organizations, right?
Okay.
It cracked me up at one point. Everyone was yelling and screaming because there was Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds that were doing things like Live Golf, right? And then you're like, okay, we don't like that they're going into golf. But then you look and you say, well, what else do they own? They're like the largest shareholder of Starbucks.
Okay.
Right? So BlackRock what ends up happening is they say, hey, we're going to make an educational video about Bitcoin.
Yes.
Great. And then somebody says to them, you know what? We're a publicly traded company. We better be careful that if we do not say all of the risks, that we could be sued by shareholders.
Okay.
And so it becomes a disclosure game. The United States is full of all these like gotcha legal leaks.
Yeah.
And so some lawyer or somebody in the compliance department said, well, we know that the code says there can only be 21 million, but there's no guarantee you could change the code sometime. We better put the disclaimer there to cover our ass. Again, that's fine. You want to see the disclosures? Go read the Coinbase S1 when they went public. Look at all the things that they put as potential risks.
But is that a realistic risk?
No, because the way that Bitcoin is governed is a very important point. It mimics very closely the United States government. And what I mean by that is in the United States government, there are three branches. There are checks and balances on each other. And so if people have probably heard me talk about this before, but Justice Scalia one time was asked, what did he think was the superpower of the United States? Whatever the phrasing was. And he said deadlock. And everyone was like, wait, what? Like, that is a crazy answer. And he said part of the governance beauty of the United States is those checks and balances don't allow anyone to come in and make radical changes. Right. And so the United States system grinds itself forward with lots of abrasiveness and friction, et cetera. And so that deadlock actually prevents damage from being done. So if you look at Bitcoin, there's three branches, if you will. There's the software developers, there's the miners, and then there's the node operators, the people. In order to make changes to the code, you need those three groups to all get on board. And so we saw in 2017, there was a group of people that came together. They were all miners. And they said, we have more than 50% of the hash rate. We are going to change a very technical component of Bitcoin. We're going to make the blocks bigger because we think that's how Bitcoin is going to scale. More than 50% of all the miners hash rate got together and they tried to do that. And they got a middle finger from the node operators. They said, we're not going to accept this. And it literally was called the block size war.
Is that when they forked?
It was all out war intellectually, online, etc. So when you try to make a change and you can't do it, the beauty of open source software is you can fork it.
Oh,
and so
wow, I was right.
Bitcoin was the same Bitcoin that it's been. The miners said, hey, we want to make this change. And so what do? They forked the code from the beginning of Bitcoin until that point. The two chains look identical, but they went and they changed the block sizes and they went and they created Bitcoin Cash.
I remember this. Wow.
Bitcoin Cash has done nothing but go down compared to Bitcoin. And so it didn't work. But that's the beauty of free markets, right? That's the beauty of this is, hey, you can try to change the code.
Yeah.
But if nobody wants to do it, or you don't get enough people on all three of those parties to do it, then guess what? You can go play with your ball somewhere else on the playground. And nobody went in to play that game. Everyone stayed with this game. And so the same thing here. Somebody could show up today and say, you know what? I'm actually going to create a Bitcoin fork. And I'm not going to have 21 coins. I'm going to have 42 million coins. Go do it. The market's going to decide. But guess what? The market's going to stay with the 21 million Bitcoin because that is the code that everyone has rallied around and said, this is Bitcoin. And so I just think that this idea of BlackRock putting it in the video is much more of a legalese. And you know, again, it goes back to there are different people in the market today. BlackRock and what they have to address is very different when it's me or individuals. I have no lawyer up my ass telling me, when you tweet, you should put this huge disclaimer because you said Bitcoin is good.
But also, I didn't know this, but earlier this year, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan CEO, said he believed Bitcoin supply could be changed in the future. He said, how the hell do you know that it's going to stop at 21 million? He said at Davos. I've never met one person who told me that they know for a fact.
Okay. How do you know Jamie Dimon is going to be the CEO of JP Morgan in 10 years? Right. Again, I actually think that Jamie Dimon is an incredibly intelligent person. He's definitely the best banker of our generation. Bitcoin. I don't even think that he hates Bitcoin. Right. I think that he enjoys playing the contrarian on Bitcoin. Right. But that's fine. Like, whatever. Put him aside for a second. My thought process is you don't know.
Right.
But you can check every day. That's the difference, is that if a change is going to be made, you need all three branches of Bitcoin to come together and make that decision.
Yeah.
And then you can audit the code every single day. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future for anything. But what I can tell you is today, what happened on Bitcoin, I can show you on chain, and then I can tell you what does the code say is going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And when that code changes, I can tell you in real time, this is the change that's being that's going to be implemented. And so if it ever changes, you're going to know immediately. But as of right now, that's what the code says. The code has continued to execute exactly as it's been implemented. And I don't foresee that changing anytime in the future. If it does, tune in. I'll be the first one to tell you. But right now, I don't see that happen.
As an aside, it's great news that BlackRock is making Bitcoin explainer videos. This would have never happened 4 years ago.
BlackRock is the chief marketing department of Bitcoin. I've been saying for months now, Larry Fink is the CMO of Bitcoin. He doesn't even have to try. All he has to do is go on TV. They ask him about it. If he says anything positive, he is the chief marketing officer of Bitcoin because the messenger matters more than the message. The fact that he likes Bitcoin now is incredibly important. And I think that he continues to go on TV and not only just say positive things, but say things like, oh, Bitcoin's going up because it's a flight to quality. That was unfathomable 5 years ago coming out of his mouth. And so he's done a fantastic job. BlackRock, the entire team over there, Robbie Mitchnick, et cetera, they've done a great job of putting that product out in the market and definitely becoming the winner. But there are a number of other very successful launches as well. You can go and you can look at Fidelity, Bitwise, 21 Shares, et cetera. They're all doing a very good job, I think, of getting these assets into these funds.
Yeah. So, okay, there's a Forbes article that came out. This is the second kind of risk that people are talking about for Bitcoin.
Not a risk.
It says, in recent days, there has been a mini media firestorm surrounding Google's announcement about Willow, its new quantum computer, and a perceived threat to Bitcoin. Most of the analysis reveals a remarkably surface-level understanding of how quantum computing will change cryptography, as well as how Bitcoin remains resilient to these kinds of technological advancements. What do we need to worry about with the quantum computers now?
Right now, nothing.
Why?
Nobody has a quantum computer.
Okay.
They have a chip that shows promise that maybe in the future, in like a decade, could become a quantum computer.
Okay. So, but what is the risk?
Well, the whole idea of cryptography is you could brute force it if you have a computer that could do, if it took 50 years to do a calculation, right? And now you can do it in 5 minutes. Well, maybe you could actually violate the encryption. Well, guess what? Encryption has gone through a ton of new technology advancements throughout the years. And every time that a new technology is coming out that the bad guys want to use, the good guys are right there to increase the defenses. And so should we pay attention to this? Absolutely. Could quantum computing be a big problem in the future? Absolutely. Is it a problem today? No. I know of very specific companies that are already working to go and try to increase the quantum protection of these blockchains, et cetera. And so I think that's really where you can see people are thinking about, okay, there's a quantum computer. What I always tell people is, you want to know what the risk is? The risk no one's talking about. If it's written in the headlines of Forbes, it ain't a risk.
Well,
just think about that, right?
No,
the reporters are telling you it's a risk. No, it's not a risk.
This article actually makes a pretty good point that, quantum computing is not an existential threat to Bitcoin because just like the Y2K computer upgrades that things had to go through, it's likely, when this comes about, like Bitcoin will have a similar upgrade. But it says it's not an existential threat to Bitcoin itself, and it won't only be Bitcoin that's affected, since what we're really dealing with is the ability of quantum computers to crack every kind of cryptography we use today across finance, commerce, banking, and more. I
mean, that's the whole other argument is like, hey, if I had a quantum computer that could crack encryption, if I go and I steal the Bitcoin, now the Bitcoin's worthless. So what about state secrets? What about the nuclear codes? What about, all these other things that are out there that are quote unquote encrypted? Wouldn't you love for, if you're a bad guy, to get the communications between world leaders and supposedly encrypted communication or military communications or state secrets, all these different things. And so it just comes back to this idea.
Don't be a bad guy.
Well, obviously, don't be a bad guy. Bad guys are bad. That's in their name. But
you've been spending too much time with our 3-year-old.
No, I mean, you got to explain it sometimes.
Bad guys
It's kind of like the Luigi guy. Like, murder is bad. You shouldn't do that. If he did it, I don't know. Like, supposedly, allegedly, you're supposed to say that. But he seems to be the one who probably did it. And so I don't know why we're celebrating a guy like that, right? And so it's like when you get into these conversations, it's like society has lost its mind. And so bad guys are bad. If you murder people, you're bad. If you do things that you're not supposed to do, you should get in trouble. Like, pretty simple. And if you come back to this encryption thing, encryption is there because it is increasing privacy. It's increasing security. And so think of all of the banks, right? Would you rather steal Bitcoin or would you rather go break into a bank electronically? Right, that all these things that I think are much bigger targets than Bitcoin at just $1.5 trillion or so.
This I think this is an op-ed. This isn't a real article by Forbes, but it's really good. It says critics who have long criticized Bitcoin are seizing on Google's quantum computing news to predict Bitcoin's downfall. These reactions often say more about the biases of the skeptics than the vulnerabilities of Bitcoin itself.
Show me one critic that can talk about Bitcoin in greater detail with more depth of understanding than the best Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
I don't know one. And there are people who will say, hey, look, and the people I probably respect the most out of the critics, I understand why people like this. I understand how it works. I understand why it has value. I just don't like it.
Yeah, which is a fair point.
That's fine. There's plenty of assets that I see that, I've talked ad nauseum about the fact that somebody pitched me early on, AI porn company. Going to be a home run, grand slam. I don't want to be involved.
Yeah.
Right. And so it goes back to, I understand exactly why they're doing it. I could actually argue the pros and cons of the company. Right. And I could see exactly how they're going to monitor. Like, it was a grand slam.
Yeah.
As long as they execute, that company is going to be a massive company. I don't want to be involved. Mm-hmm. And so if you go and you look, there's a lot of people, I think, who look at Bitcoin and they say, hey, look, I've done the work. I understand how it works. I can argue the pros and cons with other stuff. I actually think it's going to work. I just don't want to be involved. And so having that approach, I think, is a much more intellectually honest approach than the people who are like, the quantum computer is coming. Oh my God, everyone saw your bit. Like, shut up. Yeah. Just shut up.
It's kind of like when you don't like something, you just look for, it's a confirmation bias of things you don't like about it.
Oh, they're not sending their best to critique Bitcoin. That's for sure. Nassim Taleb is still tweeting out into the ether after he blocked everybody about how Bitcoin's going to zero. And Nassim his portfolio just looks like a bag of trash compared to Bitcoin's return.
Oh, man.
It's true.
Clip that. All right.
Clip nothing. Listen, Taleb is the perfect example, right? He's the perfect example. He is an intellectual who, read the books. They're incredible. He nails it. He is incredibly smart. But he thinks that he's even smarter than he actually is. And so whenever things come out, he actually is not as much of a practitioner as he is an academic. And so he sees something and he comes up with all these academic theories as to why something's not going to work. Yeah. Dude, egg on your face, man. Like, just give it up. You think you're smarter than Larry Fink now. You think you're smarter than Paul Tudor Jones. You think you're smarter than Stanley Druckenmiller. You think you're smarter. And then you realize, you're like, wait a second. This guy thinks he's smarter than everybody.
I do think, I witnessed this in 2022, I believe it was, when all the crypto companies came crashing down, the price, everything. The haters were taking a lap.
That's fine. Knock yourself out. But guess what?
It's probably going to happen again because it's cyclical, right?
Of course. But who cares? Because at the end of the day, it comes back to this idea of a broken clock is right twice a day.
Okay.
The critics will sit there and they were yelling at 1,000, it's going to zero. And then it'll go to 20,000. And they're still yelling it's going to zero. And then it drops to 3,000. I told you. And then it goes to 69,000. Like, it's going to zero. And then it drops to 17,000. I told you. Bro, what are you talking about? This thing is up 100x since you were yelling at 1,000 that it was going to zero. Mm-hmm. So it comes back to, at what point would they change their mind? And that's my favorite question to ask the critics. At what point would you change your mind? What has to be true for you to change your mind? By the way, I could rattle off 10, 15 things. If it came to Bitcoin, what would change my mind? Mm-hmm. Right? One obviously is if the price broke below some level. If Bitcoin all of a sudden we woke up tomorrow and it had dropped and it was $50, that would cause a lot of people to change their mind. They'd be like, wait a minute, like that is such a serious drop. What happened? If all of a sudden 90% of Bitcoin's hash rate went offline, it became unsecure, I would have a lot of questions. If somehow somebody got centralized control of it, all of a sudden, a lot of the value proposition goes away, right? You can go through these different things. The things I just mentioned have like a 0.0001% probability of happening. But again, if they happened, I would probably change my mind, or at least I'd be very focused on trying to understand why did this happen and should I change my mind? If you ask critics, they'll literally tell you nothing. You say, what would change your mind? They say nothing. Okay, so you're just an idiot.
Wait, I just have a quick question. Is it possible if countries start buying Bitcoin for somebody to spend enough money to have the majority, or no?
Of Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Well, Bitcoiners aren't going to sell their Bitcoin. So
Or not.
No. So if a country had to buy 51%, which even if they own 51%, they have no extra control over Bitcoin than anyone else. But even if they spent all the money they had, Bitcoin would be at $50 million for a country to be able to buy all the Bitcoin. Right. I mean, they would just have to spend such an enormous amount of money and the price would just keep skyrocketing because all that capital coming in with a fixed supply asset. And so to go back to Taleb just for one last second, I got a personal thing with Taleb because he also violates the second rule in my book of being a critic. When you're a contrarian, you can't also be an asshole. Right? Because if you're going against the grain, you have to understand that if you're right, that means that there's a whole hell of a lot of people who their worldview, their portfolios, like there's going to be a lot of damage and negative impact.
Yeah.
You should be gracious in your victory. But if you're wrong, then literally you're just standing on a soapbox proving that you're the idiot in the corner because you're the one who believes something and everyone else doesn't believe it. Mm-hmm. So if you're a contrarian, you can't be an asshole.
Why not?
Because it ultimately goes back to this idea of if you have true intellectual humility, you say to yourself, I know everyone believes A, I believe B, here's my reasons why, I may be wrong.
Yeah, he doesn't do that. I just went on his Twitter. The latest is how...
I can't go on his Twitter because he blocked me.
I'm not blocked.
Yeah, and I was super nice to him. But he did one time hear that the very first fund that I ever had, me and Jason Williams started the fund and we didn't have an office and we would go to a Starbucks and we would work out of the Starbucks together. Some of the most fun I've ever had in my life, right? Also, early investor in 4 unicorns in that fund. Thank you. But he tweeted at us and was like, go back to the Starbucks bathroom or something. And I was like, see, like, again, if you're a contrarian, you can't be an asshole.
Yeah.
And so.
But some people just enjoy the fun of Twitters.
I have tried to get Taleb to come on the podcast. I've tried to get him to go to lunch. I've tried to get him to do all, like, I wouldn't even need to record it.
Yeah.
I would just like to have a conversation with them and sit down and say, listen, like, give me the best argument as to why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe he could convince me. I don't know. A lot of people know this. Mark Spitznagel, who is one of Taleb's partners, is probably one of my favorite investors. I think incredibly highly of him. I love their strategy. I think that they're very smart. I love his approach to life, his ethos, his values, all that kind of stuff. In some of the books that Spitznagel has written, or there's been other books written, they used to go on these long walks in New York City, like in the middle of the day, and just talk. I would love to go on a 3-hour walk with Nassim Taleb and just talk about the world and markets. Also, I actually don't even think we need to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's interested.
All right. Well,
so Nassim, if you see this, call me.
Wow. Okay.
If not, you're wrong.
Talk about the man does not hold a grudge, I promise. So the markets. Sorry, I'm just still thinking about it. So former President Jimmy Carter passed away at 100 years old this week. The New York Stock Exchange announced that the markets will close on January 9th to commemorate the loss of an American president. It is customary for the exchange to close trading to honor the passing of a president. The last such occasion was in December 2018 for the death of former President George H.W. Bush. Oh, what do you think?
Market manipulation should be outlawed.
But why?
Outlawed.
But why? It's a nice commemorative thing.
Listen.
I'm going to argue on behalf of the presidents.
if you want to honor a former president,
Yes.
which is a noble cause,
Yes.
there are many ways to do it without locking millions of people out of accessing their financial assets. They cannot access their financial assets. You are hurting. You're taking away access from millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people, many of which are not even American, to honor a former president.
Oh, the NASDAQ will also close trading that day.
Fly the flag at half staff, hold an event, have a moment of silence when the market opens. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. But closing the market is woke capitalism.
Yeah, but
It's virtue signaling.
This was founded in the 1700s. They were not woke then.
It's virtue signaling.
A nice tradition.
It's virtue signaling.
No.
And as I continue to say, having hours of operations is market manipulation. Let the market be free. If you close the market, it is not a free market. Open the market 24/7, 365, and allow assets to trade. The machines are trading. Let them trade.
It says it is rare for the exchange to close on non-holidays since it is a symbol of America's leading capital markets position in the world.
Let me take a step further. You want to honor real heroes? Why don't they shut the stock market when soldiers die overseas?
Well,
Why is it just for the president?
now you want it closed all the time. And
Well, let's just extrapolate this out, right?
I see what you're saying.
Oh, do they not meet your standard? Are they not heroes? Are they not part of the American fabric? Do they not meet the criteria that you have? If we're going to shut the market, when Martin Luther King Jr. died, why didn't we shut the market?
They did. They actually did for that one.
Again, okay, perfect example. Why Martin Luther King Jr.?
What?
He's not a president.
That was an exception.
No,
but
but here we go. Now we're playing a game. So now you're going to say, this is the craziest part. Ready? Is you say, oh, it's for presidents. Oh, but Martin Luther King Jr. Okay. So what's the next one? The next person that dies, who gets to decide? The point goes back to this is not actually conducive to a free market. And so even crazier than the presidents is when you start to pick and choose. You say, oh, Martin Luther King Jr., we're going to shut it for him. That's even, if I had known that I would have even went even crazier with my tweet.
Wow.
Because it comes back to the idea of
Human bias.
how are you honoring someone by shutting down the most American thing we have, which is capitalism?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. And so it goes back to the American people don't want this. They didn't ask for this. Just open the markets.
Okay.
Again, it'd be real nice. Go out on the stock market floor, have a moment of silence, do a little ceremony. All great. But shutting down the stock market makes no sense. And so if you say, oh, we always do it for presidents, great. Well, what category did Martin Luther King Jr. fall into? Is that just world leaders? When Gandhi died?
I don't know.
Did we do it?
I don't know what the criteria is, but they probably should have a better criteria if they're going to shut it.
Do you have a list of when else for whatever their events
I still think
they have shut the market for?
I don't have a list. Do I need a list?
Well, I'm just wondering. So if you do Martin Luther King Jr., when Jackie Robinson died,
Okay, hold on.
did they shut the market?
Let's ask ChatGPT. At what non-holiday times has
For death. When else did they do it?
Let's see.
I love a little live ChatGPT.
Oh, they did it following September 11th.
Okay.
They did it for Hurricane Sandy. That was the first weather-related closure of this length for 2 days. There was a technical glitch in 2015. Oh, and then in response to the pandemic, the New York Stock Exchange temporarily moved to all electronic exchange, closing its trading floor.
Okay.
Yeah. But
they did it for Martin Luther King Jr., you said.
That's what the CNBC article said, yeah.
Okay. Did they list anybody else?
Hold on.
So let's use a hypothetical situation. If they closed the stock market because Martin Luther King Jr. died, but not for Jackie Robinson.
Oh, okay. They do have a few. Okay. So MLK, President John F. K. assassination, FDR, World War I in response to outbreak was shut down for nearly 4 months, but that's different. Wall Street bombing in 1920, stock market crash. Yeah. I mean, again, But like some of those were.
It comes back to the idea that if you're going to start playing the game of we're going to pick and choose, then why don't we just every single day? Because that is how this works, right? Is you just extrapolate it out every day. We should just shut the stock market because somebody somewhere died.
I do think that there's like different ways to honor them, but I just think this is like a 1700s tradition that has stayed.
Just because you've been wrong doesn't mean you should continue to be wrong. And the only thing worse than being wrong today is committing to continuing to being wrong in the future.
Fair.
We live in a global, digital, real-time, 24/7 market. And you're going to shut the stock market. By the way, we haven't even talked about for holidays. It's the biggest joke in the world. They have half days in preparation for holidays.
Yeah.
The machines don't take a break. That's the world we're headed towards. And everyone who says, oh, it's honoring this, it's honoring that, whatever, right?
It's going to be closed tomorrow.
Bitcoin trades 24/7, 365. The entire crypto market, a multi-trillion-dollar market, trades 24/7, 365. There are no hours of operations. You can't shut it off.
Yeah.
So why is it that the digital native world says we just are always on? But the dinosaurs of Wall Street are picking and choosing when to shut the market. Because it's market manipulation. You're manipulating a free market. You're preventing the trading of assets. And so it comes back to very easy solution. Don't shut the market.
Mm-hmm.
The technology's there. Robinhood has pioneered this. They've introduced all this overnight trading, all these after hours trading. And so how is it that a technology company is able to affect change here, but the existing exchanges won't?
Yeah.
And my guess is, and I only say this because I've talked to some of the people at the exchanges actually want to change some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. They would like there to be 24/7 trading. They would like for there to be more volume trading. They would like to not have to shut down the market.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always the balance between how do you disrupt the status quo, the incumbents and kind of the tradition, et cetera, with adapting for the new world.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for the people in charge of these roles to do it. Open the market. That's the overarching message. Open the market. And if it takes Congress to step in and create legislation that says you cannot shut down the American market, then so be it.
Okay.
I can't believe they shut it for MLK and not for somebody like Jackie Robinson.
I don't know what to tell you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ledger. They're celebrating 10 years as the most trusted name in crypto security. With over 7 million users and 20% of the world's digital assets secured, Ledger continues to lead the way in protecting your crypto and digital ownership. Their latest devices, the Ledger Stacks and the Ledger Flex, feature the world's first secure touchscreens, making managing your assets easier and safer than ever. Plus, the new Ledger Security Key app offers a secure alternative to traditional passwords, enhancing your digital security. It's a great product. You should go check it out. And for a limited time, if you upgrade to Ledger Flex, you'll get $70 in Bitcoin. This sale is only for the holidays, so act now. Upgrade your security and get free Bitcoin. Go to ledgerpomp.com to take control of your digital future. That's ledgerpomp.com. If you upgrade to Ledger Flex, you'll get $70 in Bitcoin. Enjoy.
So let's talk about the H-1B visa saga. First, let me just tell you what the H-1B visa is very quickly, and then we can talk about the drama. The H-1B visa is a U.S. work visa that allows employers to hire foreign workers in specialty occupations requiring theoretical or technical expertise like IT, engineering, finance, etc. The eligibility requires a bachelor's degree or higher in a related field. It's initially valid for 3 years, extendable for 6. The cap, it's limited to 85,000 visas annually, 65,000 for general applicants, 20,000 for those with U.S. master's degrees. So that's not a lot of people, to be honest. 85,000 visas a year is not a lot. Employers file a petition on behalf of the employee, and it can lead to permanent residency. It's a popular visa for tech companies and fills critical skill gaps in the U.S. workforce. Tell us what the drama is.
Everyone has a hint of being right.
Yes.
And that's what makes these so controversial, is that multiple things can be true at the same time, but everyone wants to hold on to the part that matters the most to them and then extrapolate that out and yell and scream about it and not listen to the other side. It is true that there is abuse in the H-1B system.
But we're talking about 85,000.
Doesn't matter what the number is.
Okay.
There's a system that brings in non-Americans to work in the United States where an American could get the job, and it is not being used for the reason that it was originally created. That is true. Is it as big of a abuse system as people want to make it out to be? Well, if every single H-1B was abused, they were all fraudulent in terms of it.
They're not. I know a few.
But let's just cede the point, right, for the argument's sake. 100% of H-1Bs that are created in 2024 were abused.
Okay.
What's the total number? You said 85,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so 85,000 out of a country of 330 million Americans, right? It's a very, very small number. That's if 100% of them. So again, is there abuse? 100%. Should we stop the abuse? Absolutely. How do we do that? Somebody smarter than me will figure that out, right? But is there abuse? Yes. The second thing is, if you are a company that is competing on the global stage, you need the best people, regardless of what language they speak, what their religion, their wealth status, their sex, their income level, whatever. You just need the best people. And usually in these debates, the people who are building and running those companies, that's their position. I need the best people. It's the people who don't run the companies who are yelling and screaming about all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But the people who are actually on the ground closest to the problem say, I need the best people. So again, there's abuse, but also true, you need the best people. And the United States has a monopoly on great talent, but that doesn't mean there's not great talent elsewhere.
Okay.
Right?
That would want to come here.
There's a line out the door. I mean, look at our southern border. There's people who are literally just walking from hundreds of miles to walk into our country.
Yep.
So the people who don't like our country, you can leave. You'll easily have somebody who wants to take your spot. There are a lot of workers who want to come here because they want opportunity. They want higher pay. They want social mobility.
Freedom.
There are people who want freedom. There are people who want to come here in arbitrage. They want to make more money and send it home to their families. There's a bunch of reasons why people want to come here. There are people who move to the United States through these programs simply because they watched a movie when they were a kid.
Wait, just really, really quick on our prior point. In 2024, there were 780,884 applications for those 85,000 slots.
So
line out the door.
So 1 in 10, right?
10 to 15%.
15% gets approved. Now, if we understand that there's abuse in the system, we understand that the companies want the best people.
Yep.
We also have something called country caps or country components, which my understanding, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a lawyer, definitely not an immigration expert, but my understanding in doing some reading is that country like India gets as many slots as a much smaller country like maybe Sweden or whatever. And so what ends up happening is you get these really long backed up lines in countries that have 1 billion people. And then other countries, obviously there's a much slower line or a much faster line because there's not as many people applying. So again, there's probably some things to do there on that.
It does not prioritize or limit applicants by country. Everyone competes equally for the same pool of 85,000.
No. The H-1Bs, my understanding is that each country is allocated a certain number of H-1Bs, and it creates this huge backlog. So like a country like India, it can be like a 10-year wait.
Wait. If you apply for permanent residency, like a green card, after getting an H-1B, country-specific quotas can create significant delays. But to apply, there's no country quotas.
Yeah, applications, but I think the acceptance. We'll have to, again, we're not experts. We'll have to check.
For example, an Indian H-1B holder may wait decades for a green card. Applicants from smaller countries may get a green card within a few years. It's because if you want a green card, not if you want the visa.
Okay, fair. So another component of this is that what it means to be American is actually a paradox. America is a country that was built by immigrants. If you look around a room, go to anywhere, go to Times Square, go to Grand Central, go to the middle of Iowa, and you look at those people and you say, where did your family come from? They can tell you, my grandfather grew up on this land. My grandfather did this. My grandmother did this. But if you keep going far enough back, they came from somewhere. Most people in this country, their families did not originate in the in what is today the United States.
The other day we were talking about how with me, it was me, my generation, but with you, it was like 2 generations ago. And it's like how quickly you can go from not speaking a word of English to like your children or your grandchildren achieving these amazing things.
The reason why that Polina and I had this conversation is it never hit me until I started thinking about my grandparents and great grandparents. Or some of them came, they went back, they came, etc. The amount of social mobility that is available in this country in 2 or 3 generations is absurd. And so you look at it and you say, how would you not have some portion of your population that wants to go to the United States if that's possible? Of course. So again, these families came from somewhere. At the same time, it is incredibly important to protect what it means to be an American. Mm-hmm. And so there are people, especially online, who continue to say, we should prioritize American citizens. We should prioritize training American citizens. 100% true. You're right. We should do that. The best example that I heard of this is, I can't remember who tweeted it, but somebody said, it's kind of like the NBA. You have a team, and on that team, 90+% of them are American. But you might go get 1 star player from somewhere else and put them on your team. Mm-hmm. And now you have a better team because you got the 1 star player from an international market, but the majority of your team is American.
Yeah.
And they're working here. They're creating value. They're, paying taxes, etc. So again, it goes back to this idea that like each side of the debate, if you put all the people at a round table and you said, what do you believe? Each one of them has at least a hint of being right.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you put them all together, everyone is looking in the rearview mirror and they're saying, look at the problems.
Yeah.
My challenge to everyone is look forward, look through the windshield. What is the solution? I don't have some perfect plan, but what I do know is that if someone could create a plan that says, we only want the best of the best, it has to be a meritocratic system where we have some way to prove that they're the best. We have to somehow disincentivize American companies from so easily importing people from other countries to replace American workers. So they're only incentivized to do the absolute best, people who are better than Americans, take a software engineer or whatever. And we have to end the abuse of the system. And we have to figure out a way to make this sustainable over the long run. And we have to figure out how to better train and educate American workers. That would be the plan.
To me, it's like, I take issue with the people, the extremists on the right who say that it should be American only. We should train the people here. There shouldn't be any immigrants hired for these roles. But like, again, it's been a long time coming. This country does not prioritize STEM education like other countries do. I've told you in Bulgaria, we were solving for X in 2nd grade. Like it's definitely, they put a premium on it over there. The other thing is that immigrants, like you say, it's a perfect paradox. Immigrants, I think, tend to love America more even. And I think that they are even more proud to be American than people who are born here. But also...
generally, yes. There's always exceptions, but yes.
Of course. But like my dad is so proud to have like the American flag hang in his house.
And there's a hell of a lot of Americans that think the American flag is a signal that you're a far right extremist.
Right. And they're a naturalized citizen, many of them. So they had to like pass a test and like know the history to questions that a lot of Americans born here maybe would not. And it's important to note that a lot of economic, like the immigrants add a lot of positive things to the economy, such as jobs. As of 2024, 46% of Fortune 500 companies, 230 firms, were founded by immigrants or their children. This marks the highest percentage recorded in the history of such reports. These companies collectively generated $8.6 trillion in revenue in fiscal year 2023 and employed over 15.5 million people worldwide.
This is where being an independent becomes a superpower. When the far left implemented their dumb DEI nonsense, and they said we should pick people for jobs based on things other than who's the best person for the job,
America.
I yelled and I screamed. And I said, this is dumb, this is bad, these people are idiots, and this is not going to work. Now, when the right has their own version where they say we should pick people for jobs for reasons other than they're the best person for the job, I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm saying they're dumb and they're wrong and it's not going to work.
Okay.
Because what we are figuring out in society is that Marjorie Greene and AOC are the same person. The far right and the far left are the same extremist.
Yeah.
What you are watching is not a swing solely from left to right in the country. You are actually seeing a swing back to a more centrist, common sense, etc. And
it's a rejection of extremism.
That is why Donald Trump won, is because Donald Trump actually softened on some of his most controversial opinions. Look at IVF. Look at some of the things that people really said, hey, he's too far.
Yeah.
He softened. He came back a little bit more to the center. Now, he still has very, very strong views. Secure the border, build more housing, get inflation down, have a strong national defense, all these things, right? Those aren't extreme views. Those are actually views held by the majority of Americans. They don't want a porous border. They want to have housing that is affordable. They don't want high inflation. They believe that America is strong and that strength is a deterrence. All these things. When it comes to things like immigration, the problem is it's not a widely held opinion to be anti-immigration, to be anti-skilled labor, because the country is made up of so many people who are immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
So what you are basically doing is you're advocating to a group of people to be against themselves, which is a losing strategy.
Yeah.
And so it comes back to this idea. If America wants to be the best, we need the best. Option one, let's create the best here. We should do that.
We can do
we do an okay job, but we can do much better. Option two, go find the best and bring them here. There's a reason why I say that's option two. And option one is to build them here.
Mm-hmm.
We can create the greatest number of highly skilled labor in the world. But we ain't going to do it with the current Department of Education. We ain't going to do it with the current school system. We're definitely not going to do it with teacher unions holding these schools hostage. And we're definitely not going to do it in a world where our children are being taught nonsense rather than math and science.
Yep. I got to say, though, back to this. So people were very worked up about this H-1B issue. Elon Musk was going on tirades on Twitter supporting it. Vivek Ramaswamy was getting heat because he said that American children were watching or prioritizing the wrong things. All this stuff happened. And Trump didn't say anything. And my bet was that Trump would side with the people who were saying, you know what? This immigration thing sucks. It's broken. We need to fix it, which, I mean, yes, it's a fair point. But he said he came out in support of the H-1B program. He said, I've always liked the visas. I have always been in favor of the visas. This is why we have them. I have many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a believer in H-1B. I've used it many times. It's a great program. So
that is Trump moving more back to the center. That is Trump rejecting the extreme views of a party.
Yeah.
The reason why Trump won and was able to get so many undecided voters and people who were center left to move over, one, he had the blessing of running against a very weak candidate.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 is he actually softened a lot of his positions. Not maybe a lot is even an exaggeration. Maybe he softened a number of his positions, and he didn't go left. What he did was he just came back a little bit to the center. And I think that's where people said to themselves, you know what? That's where I am.
Yeah.
Right? Is I think we should go get the best people, but we should also stop the abuse. And so my message to a lot of people is the following. Your view has truth to it. The only way this gets solved, the only way we look through the windshield rather than the rearview mirror, is we got to work together. And so the same person who says there's abuse has to work with the person who says, I need the best people, who has to work with the person that says we must preserve the American values and society and the things that are important to America, who also has to work with the person who sits there and says, we need to train American people. All that is true.
Because there's power in nuance. And I think over the last few years, that's what we've lost. It's either you're here or you're here. There's no nuance.
Well, if I'm going to dunk on you on Twitter, it needs to be black and white.
Yeah.
Right? But if you go and you sit these people down and you say, hey, look, here's where the conversation is. And so in a hilarious way, I actually think this whole kerfuffle has created more strength.
I agree.
In all of these people because they realize we're going to get in the shit. You want to create change. You really want to go in there. You want to rip out spending. You want to secure the border. You want to do. It's going to be some hard stuff.
Yeah.
This is not going to be like, hey, here's my stump speach and let's go get things done.
But it's also surprising. I had no idea that so many people felt so strongly about H-1B visas.
It is this undertone of people are upset because there's illegal immigration.
Right.
And so then they extrapolate that and they say all immigration is bad.
Right.
But it goes back to you want nuance. Well, there's a difference between illegal immigration and legal immigration. There's a difference between people who are coming here and they become a drain on the system versus people who come here and they contribute to the system.
Right.
And there's a hell of a lot of examples of people who were here, who we did not work to keep here, and they left. TSMC is one of the best examples. Probably one of the single most important companies from a national strategic standpoint was not built in the United States.
TSMC? I don't know this one.
In Taiwan.
Mm.
And so if you go and you look at TSMC.
Oh, the semiconductor.
Yeah, they create all the chips. He was here. But he couldn't build it here. Now all of a sudden, there is debate as to whether the United States should step in from a military standpoint if China was to try to take Taiwan, because TSMC is such an important part of America's strength in national defense.
Interesting.
So for all the people who are yelling and screaming about immigration, well, hold on a second. We may get pulled into a war decades later because we took a certain stance. This stuff's super complex. It's all interrelated. I don't think there's easy answers. I actually think there are things that I said today that I will learn more about over the next couple of years.
Totally.
And I would change my mind on.
That won't prevent people from clipping these
it's fine.
Clips and saying
whatever.
Wrong.
You want to clip something, go get Taleb to come on the podcast.
Just please make sure I'm not in the video because I don't feel like getting. Okay. Last topic. What is your 2025 prediction? Today, we are filming. It is the last day of 2024. What is your hot take for the year?
Everyone is underestimating AI and everyone is underestimating Bitcoin. For all the hype, for all the bullishness, for all the excitement, we are all underestimating how big those two trends will be. And it is not just a 2025 thing. It is the next 2 decades. We will look back and we will be shocked at how big, how important, how integral they are to American life. And so the people who are excited today, it's really hard for them to fathom how it could actually be even bigger. But I think that is likely to be the scenario. How many people saw Bitcoin in 2010, 11, 12, 13, and were like, within 15 years, I think it'll be $100,000.
Yeah.
I think that countries will be buying it. It sounded like a psychopath. Here we are. AI is moving at a pace that is just hard to comprehend, right? I could sit all day, do no work, just read about all the advancements, and I couldn't keep up.
Mm-hmm.
That's how fast it's moving. And so if the trend is likely to lead to explosions of adoption and advancement that are bigger than what you're expecting today,
mm-hmm.
you really, really have to focus and take seriously, if I want to be in the business or investing world, I have to become an expert, which means that I need to treat this like I was studying for an exam. Go and do the work. And so in 2025, I think there's going to be a great separation of people. The people who take this seriously and who say, hey, look, I'm going to go and I'm going to do the work and I'm going to learn about this stuff and I'm going to, make sure that I'm understanding as much as I can. And the people who say, I think it's all hype. It's not going to be around. I'm not worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that bifurcation, that decision that individuals make, I think will drastically determine outcomes over the next decade or so. And so I'm going to be in the camp of, let's go get the books. Let's go read. Let's go learn. Let's go get prepared. Because if this is going to be big, I want to be there.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say is similar. I was going to say I think 2025 will be the year of the Bitcoiner. I think that up until now, Bitcoin has been kind of on the fringes of society, but also the internet. So I think this year is like you said, like kind of when it grows up, but also it becomes serious. You know what I mean? Like it's no longer just like, oh, they made money in Bitcoin. Now it's like a serious thing where financial institutions are taking it seriously. Countries are taking it seriously. So we'll see what happens.
Thanks so much for doing this. Hope you guys all have a great new year. See you guys in 2025.